Okay, Derek, we're live. Okay, welcome everybody to Wall Street Reporter's Investors Discovery Day live stream for February 9th, 2021. We got a very exciting day for you today. We got three companies in the health tech space. We're going to be starting off with Relay Medical. RELA is the symbol in the CSE. RYMDF over the counter. This is their debut presentation on our platform, and we're looking for big things to come from RELA. I'm going to call it just by the symbol. And again, anybody who's tuning in for the first time, our goal is to bring you those stocks which have that 10x to 100x upside potential. We've had a whole bunch of them in the past 12 months, and we're going to find out if Relay Medical is going to be that next 10 bagger. So check out today's presentation, ask the CEO your question, and then decide for yourself. And what's very interesting about Relay is, I'm going to introduce you to Derek Ivani. Derek is the strategic advisor to Relay Medical. He's also the lead investor. He wrote a check for, I think $3 million plus his own cash, right? So it's a decent amount of chunk of change to put into a stock. Derek has had a fascinating background. He's been behind some of the biggest successes on the CSE, numerous 10x plus winners. The last company he was involved with as a CEO went up, I think it was 100x plus. Derek, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Jack. How you doing?
Derek, you're in the Bahamas?
Yes, live in Nassau.
All right, fantastic. So you're getting.
I hope your viewers don't hate me because I'm by the beach, but exactly. I had to leave Canada and come and work here because of obviously what's going on. But we're working hard for Relay over here.
Okay, excellent. So now I think what's interesting is I want to get your perspective because look, you've been in the markets for let's call it more than a few years, right? Several decades, right? And you've seen many winners. You've been involved with many winners. By winners, I'm talking about 10x plus type stocks. And so what I want to know is, if you could just tell the audience a little bit about your background and then explain why, what attracted you to the Relay story and why did you, invest $3 million into this deal? And what do you see as the upside?
So the investments are a combination of private placements, buying on the market, et cetera, over years. So I've been involved with Relay for a couple of years. The company initially really started thriving with their medical technology developments, right? So there's a lot of other stuff in the background with Relay that is not really related to COVID, although right now and what our focus is in the short term is COVID related. But essentially, I don't like one-trick pony type deals, and Clark and the company are very organized and understand how to pivot when it's needed and how to allocate resources to stuff that's important. And obviously, right now with what we're all facing, that came to my desk with some of the new stuff they're working on, and I said, I want to get involved in a big way. And my background, generally speaking, I'm more in the background of stocks in terms of being a business development guy, being a marketing guy, putting together plans, raising capital. You alluded to when I was CEO of a company, I took it from $1.5 million to 250, handed it over to a group that I felt would take it to the next level. But I know what my strengths are, and my strengths are coming in early, sorry about the background noise, and helping a company really build the story, right? So type investments, it's not just executing on the business plan. That's obviously very important, but there's also the importance of executing on a very sound marketing strategy and ensuring that you're communicating with investors, because if you don't keep their attention, you don't give them updates, and they feel that they're important and they're valued, they're going to go find something else. And to have an effective 10 bagger or even 100 bagger, you need to get those investors to become cheerleaders, right? So I like to be, I guess what they call in the street, a deal champion. Not, you can't do it with every deal, but I attached to different things that I think have a lot of legs. So when Clark came to me and really showed me what was going on, I immediately identified two short-term pillars in this company that I do believe are what's going to give this company in the short term that 10 bagger effect. But more importantly, when our world goes back to normal and we're all able to travel again and go back to life as we knew it, Relay will still be for us background that's both in medtech patient stages as well as commercialization. So, when you're looking at a company like this, from my perspective, to get involved with, to write checks, to support, you want to have a management team that you can work with that understands both of those elements. And, a lot of companies kind of fail because you got guys that think that if you just kind of build the business and don't really give anything to investors and ignore them, that you're going to be this spectacular success one day, but you really won't. If you don't have an investor story, you're not going to make it. You're going to see a stock that dwindles away, more dilution, and you disappear. But smart companies that know how to market and know how to leverage their stock price as a currency and continue to do smart acquisitions and really build the story are the ones that prevail. And that's why I really like Relay, because Clark gets it, and so does the whole team. And
so that's okay. So we're getting some
that I've talked to initially when
Derek.
Sorry. Yeah.
So we're getting the internet on your end is kind of breaking up a little bit, but so I think that you said a couple of very important things, which again, what I have found is we're completely on the same page here. I mean, the stocks that we've seen become those 10 baggers. One of the most important things is having that CEO who gets it. When it comes to, as you said, knowing when and how to pivot, when to seize those opportunities. Because look, if you can use right now, the stock is doing great. You have cash in the bank. I mean, you could use that as currency for acquisitions. So this, and plus you have the organic side. We're going to be. Clark is going to talk about the organic side. The acquisitions is going to come, but that is kind of the thing that really is the turbocharger there. But I think you said something interesting. I don't know if you are able to talk about it or not, but you said of a couple of catalysts right now that could be potential 10 baggers for Relay.
Yeah, there's a lot of things in queue. Obviously, like other investors, I know a certain degree of stuff that I'm able to use that's fully disclosed. There's other stuff that's internal to the company. I am an outside advisor. But I think it's, as an investor, and what everybody really knows, if you read the deck and you read what's been disseminated, there's two short-term pillars that are critical here. And one of them is the FEO technology. That's, what I call the digital health pass, which I think everybody's going to need in the future. The other component is an investment that they strategically made in a Swiss operation called Swiss Pharmacan, which gives them rights to something called Artemic C. And it's, if any, that particular project, if they've been following the story, or if they haven't, they know what micellization technology is. These guys have really put some therapeutics on steroids and have done some stuff already in the COVID world that I'm quite frankly surprised this deal isn't already well over $1 on that alone. Because if you look at one of the main comparables to Relay with that particular component of the company alone, which the ticker is MVMD, you see a stock that went from 20 to I think over $2 in a very short period, and really has that as part of this equation. But on top of that has the FEO tech, and it's very unique because FEO on its own has been validated. So when you're looking at technologies and you say, well, I don't know if is this real? Do I believe in this? Well, the United States Department of Defense has validated this with Relay. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation has invested in this technology, and really took this, built around the infrastructure, and really applied it hard to COVID. But it's not just about COVID. It's all about all kinds of epidemics.
So this company has a lot of legs.
It's not a one-trick pony.
Yeah.
100%, right? And keep in mind.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm getting excited here, Jack, because we're in this COVID pandemic right now, but it's not our first, and it's not going to be our last, right? And it's important to understand that with what Relay's building with this infrastructure, it's going to be along for a very long time, unless it gets taken over, which generally happens when you see companies like this crawl out of the small cap space into the mid cap. Some large cap will come and gobble it up, right? And that's what I like about this. Like, I can sleep at night. It's kind of like my COVID hedge. Even though right now things going up around you, doesn't really matter what you're buying. People are just buying everything. That's dangerous, because when it comes down, it's going to be really hard. However, Relay, because of the portfolio of what they have going on and because of the substance, it's going to be around. And that's where I want to put my money. I don't put $3 million bucks. Like I'm not a billionaire or anything. I don't put $3 million into, but this thing, it's a one in a lifetime type of thing where I have that degree of comfort.
Okay. Okay. So Derek, so we're gonna get Clark on. Clark is gonna show us the presentation. We'll go into all the details. We'll open up for Q&A, and once Clark is done, I'm gonna have you come back. So just hang out. Hopefully the internet on your end is gonna be working. Every time we have somebody from the Bahamas, the internet is always choppy.
I apologize. So, I'm part of this.
No problems. That's what happens when you're in a paradise. All right, Derek. I'll see you in about 10 minutes. Okay, let's get ready to meet Clark. Clark, welcome.
Thanks, Jack. Thank you for having me.
Clark, you got the best name, Clark Kent. This is...
Well, your parents do enough drugs in the 60s and they get creative and you get something to remember me by. Excellent.
So Clark, I want to kind of start off. I mean, Derek told us a little bit about kind of like, the investment perspective, why he got involved with the Relay Medical story. But I kind of, what I'd like to do is have you tell the audience exactly, we're going to kind of show the slides today, sort of run through the deck, really explain to them the whole, the business, sort of the business model, the market opportunities you're going after. And then we're going to come back for the Q&A because I got some questions, I'm ready to ask. So with that said, let me get your slides on the, okay. Okay. So Clark, away.
Okay, wonderful. Well, as you've been discussing, our company is Relay Medical. Relay Medical, getting into just the finer points of what we are, the broader strokes, like I guess you could say, is a medical technology company with a focus on diagnostics, specifically in the point of care space. So bringing technologies and diagnostic solutions to point of use. And using artificial intelligence and other technologies to add additional features. And so if we come back to really where the company started and how we ended up here and speaking with you, is we've been developing the last couple of years a technology in our portfolio called the PharmaTrack. And the technology is a AI, although that's a buzzy word. I mean, really, if you're working in software, hardware, anything that's a little more current, you're gonna have components of artificial intelligence. But really looking to use a few core components to work on the predictive potential predictive values of monitoring people with their medication use and why they do or don't take their medication. In this process, at the beginning of last year, 2020, of course, we have various studies going on, things happening, and COVID hits. And like all companies, we had to really have a reset. We had to basically, for the time being, shut down our business and or our office and our lab location back when COVID started. And we really had to scratch our head and say, look, we have a dedicated team that's been developing technologies towards bringing them to market. And now with COVID, we have to look, can we pursue that same business if people can't be in the office, and if we have a pandemic or a financial downturn that makes it very difficult to operate. One of the things that we had happen was our CSO, Tom Gladell, had background working in infectious disease, and we said, how can we apply the resources that we have to really deliver on our on the value that we've created. And what he came up with was, he said, look, it's very well known the only way that you're going to be able to handle a pandemic. And at that point in time, of course, we didn't know, like the rest of the world, just how severe it was going to be. But the only way that we can handle something like that would be to test, and to test regularly, and to test and screen as much as possible. And so what we did was we took some of our assets that we had, technical assets, and we said, where can we apply this? And we found a company, a technology that had already been doing something like this in other regions, and that's called the FioNet, which we'll discuss in our portfolio. And we synced up with that group and worked together to advance a solution for COVID testing, pandemic near-term or near-care pandemic testing in the Western world, the places that we have not yet seen or experienced this type of a scenario. So the company is, as we say from the outset, public company trading on exchanges in the US, Canada, and Europe. We recently announced this commercial launch, and we are developing a portfolio of technologies, of which we'll cover two of them today, just because we've got a limited time to do so. So the FeelNet, as I mentioned, which is this technology, this is something that was used on over 1 million patients, or 1 million people, I should say, on a few different continents, 12 different countries, really where you have issues related to infectious disease, whether or not that be HIV, Ebola, listeria, malaria, dengue. These are things that have been affecting the world, different parts of the world, and thank God, not where we're speaking from. But these are infectious disease problems that have existed for a long time, and the FeelNet was deployed in order to provide a solution where you could test, you could do that intake, you can take people in, you can test large groups of people, you do so in rapid succession with very low error rate. It's a completely, with the way that we look at it is, it's like taking a device or taking a lab and wrapping it around a test. And so we got involved here. You can see it's basically how we look at it is for the layman, you've got your credit card reader, your point of sale type reader, that you can scan your credit card, you can scan your debit card, it doesn't matter which bank it comes from, which financial institution. That's our device. Our device is a handheld point of care testing platform, and it doesn't matter whether or not your tests come from Abbott, if your tests come from Roche, or come from any manufacturer that is regulatory approved and compliant in the region that we're working in, whether or not that might be in Canada right now, it's the Abbott lateral flow test. In the US, there's more than just one, and around the world there are different tests for all different types of diseases. You can see really functionally they're all very similar in the makeup of these rapid tests, but what they all additionally share in common is the high error rate that exists on these tests, because they rely on manual interpretation. We take all that guesswork, all that human work out of doing these tests, and we use artificial intelligence and our software and the technology to guide the user with new protocols as they come out or change based on government intervention, and guide the user to conduct these tests in rapid succession. These can be used. Our platform is really tailor-made for working out in the field. So you're talking about whether or not you're talking about pop-up type clinic scenarios like you've seen in some places in this country, but you've seen around the world, of course, with other diseases, ongoing screening of workplaces, schools, clinics, long-term care facilities, which is a huge one. I mean, you've got an overwhelming, huge segment of the population that really cannot see and not interact with people or their families because of this. And then, of course, big high throughput areas like airports, arenas, cruise ships. When you think right now, a lot of these testing solutions that are out there, and in Canada, when you want to go and get a test, a PCR test, you go to the hospital, you're waiting 48 hours before you get those results. This solution really crystallized for me as a non-medical background guy. I'm a finance guy, technology inventor. It really crystallized for me when I was speaking with one of the guys on our advisory board, who's a high-level police executive administrator, you could say, in Toronto, and he was looking for tests for a solution because every day his guys come home from dealing with the not great segments of a city, of a metropolis like Toronto. You have different people. You're dealing with a pandemic, and these poor police officers or first responders have to go out in the field and come back to their families that night, and they've got to wait a day to get results. So, whether or not they're going to sleep in the garage for a couple days in between these tests, it doesn't make sense. Our solution, on the other hand, can use these approved rapid diagnostic tests, these lateral flow tests, Abbott, Roche, whomever they are, and you can run them through the same system. So it's a benefit for managing a pandemic-like scenario, because you can turn off and turn on different manufacturers depending on your supply limitations, cost limitations. It's a unique solution in that way. The other thing that Derek had touched on, you had said, is given the history of this technology and that it has been deployed and tested on over 1 million patients in a bunch of different countries for a bunch of different diseases, utilizing the additional services or the additional applications that it can be deployed on. There's all sorts of examples of actually using the system in places like Colombia on dengue, where you're testing, you're testing a segment of the population that's dealing with a very difficult mosquito-borne illness, and actually using the technology to find exactly where these infections or the virus is concentrated, and honing in on that using the geodata component of this device. So you really look at this technology as a holistic solution to testing a wide group of people, or a large amount of people in rapid succession, and really doing our best to nullify the issues that come with manual interpretation of testing. And to beat this point to death, but anywhere else that you go in Canada or the US or general westernized medicine, you go into a lab to get your test. You're not watching your doctor or a technician look at your biological sample under a microscope and manually making a decision. Yet this is how these rapid diagnostic tests function. And so by using technology, we can help minimize the errors that take place when you have manual interpretation. And because you're managing this and you've got rapid updating of protocols as they come, as things change, you always know that you're going to be current with latest standards, and you're going to know how to protect the population and accurately screen them. Moving just off of the FioNet just for now, and I'm sure we'll come back in the question and answer component of the interview. We've got another asset that is now very exciting for us. We started a company actually a couple of years ago, basically a spin out kind of asset, private asset, in order to look at applying some of our technologies in the outside of the AI and diagnostics field, but actually looking at leveraging some of our technical assets to address certain agri-tech opportunities, those type of things. And when going out and actually looking in the field for real science-backed, I mean, we're not, or I should say, we try to stay away from your typical R&D, very early stage, non-scientifically validated type projects. We want something that we know there is clinical data to support, and then we're interested in really bringing it from that pre-commercial to that post-launch stage of business. And we came across a technology which is a micellization technology, really what you could call like a nutrient delivery technology in Switzerland. And what this technology does is essentially you can use natural plant botanicals, anything that's extracted. If you go from curcumin, which is one of the largest, fastest growing nutraceuticals in the world for anti-inflammatory and other things. Of course, cannabis, which everybody's very familiar with, given the activity in the last few years. You can use this technology to actually process extracted material from botanicals, natural plant botanicals, that make them dramatically more effective, more predictive. You get that rapid onset, you get this precise dosing. So when you're using something like a curcumin, you don't have to worry about, it's going to take me 6 weeks if I start this natural natural supplement or nutraceutical to really feel the effects of these of these substances. With this technology, it allows you to really feel the value of these natural compounds when you start taking them. Something very interesting that happened, as I mentioned, is that the company that is developing this, which is the Swiss Pharmacan company out of Switzerland, they've been in this business for quite some time, and they've been doing real research. There's been third parties that have conducted multiple different types of studies on they have over 300 compounds. I mean, you can go through them. I mean, you're talking about micellizing hops and curcumin, vitamin C, cannabis of all different compounds, CBD, CBN, CBG, all these things. And one of the things that they do is artemisinin, which is something that's been tested in the past, and trials and research has been done on its therapeutic value for the use with malaria. And there were a few actual studies that were published a couple years ago, non-controlled studies, but studies that were published by US-based doctors that came out that showed that there was some, based on the results of this study, there was some therapeutic evidence or of some benefit to using some of these natural products when treating the inflammatory response related to that. Fast forward to COVID, and the company ended up finding out that these materials that they've been micellizing actually may have or could have some serious therapeutic value to treating COVID-19. So the company that's been conducting the actual research studies, a company called MGC, they've announced recently a phase 2 double-blind placebo-controlled clinical trial that had results that showed significant improvement when using this product, the Artemis-C, on people who've been admitted or who have had COVID. And you can look it up. You can look up the research. As you know, these things are early stage. Sometimes you gotta, the devil's in the details. But I can tell you that overwhelmingly positive from our perspective, given that we have the relationship that we do with that company, and that Glow Life Tech, which is our technology at RELA company, which is now actually, we just announced this morning, is closing its financing and going public itself here in the next 6-8 weeks. RELA just announced that we are participating in their go public financing to really retain our interest against the dilution that'll take place in the public transaction. But we will be, of course, working on these materials and fully, let's say, evaluating the potential for this product to make it to market in the areas that Glow's operating, which is Glow Life Tech does own the exclusive rights to several of the materials and actually producing the technology in North America. So that includes all of your cannabis compounds and some of the other compounds and natural health products that you've seen in this presentation. You can find on Glow Life Tech's website. So with that, I at the end of just kind of summarizing things, I know it's quick and I talk a lot, but we've got a great team. I think really sets us aside from some of the other companies in the market that are a little more opportunistic. We have been operating in point-of-care diagnostics for 5-6 years, maybe longer. We've been developing technologies in AI for almost that long as well. We have got a shop that consists of medical technology leaders, guys who've been doing this together for many years. So we have our bases covered, and we're looking forward to combining the support that the market's given us, which now we're well capitalized with our team and the assets we have, and really getting these products out and start to generate some more than just some passive validation for our shareholders. Oops, sorry if I've messed something up there. Jack.
We're getting everybody back on here. Derek, can you unmute your mic? We're going to do the Q&A. Okay, perfect. Okay, you guys can hear me okay?
Yeah, by the way, Clark, you look beautiful.
Thank you. You know what? Not as nice as you do. I wish I had a sunburn myself.
So let's get into some audience questions. I have a couple of questions. Let me first start off with. Okay, so Clark, in terms of the technology, can you explain exactly? So you're not. I just want some investors can understand. You're basically in the technology business, the AI business. You don't develop tests. Explain exactly the value of your technology and what is it that you're doing different than anybody else. And what is the need for it specifically?
Yeah, no, for sure. So I can more than explain it. If you want, I'll actually grab a device. 1 second here. I'll grab a device just to show it won't be operational. But there we go. A little show and tell here. So basically, what we have is there effectively is two ways that COVID testing is being done right now. One is PCR. The other is you hear a lot of are these rapid diagnostic tests. And they look just like this. I mean, that's a rapid diagnostic test. I'm not sure which manufacturer, maybe Abbott, but they all look generally the same, and they're all actually interpreted just by reading them manually. You just like a pregnancy test, which you deposit a biological sample on one of these things. They will give you the time of how long you let the test sit before you interpret it. Some are 8 minutes, some are 10, some are 15. They range. You've got to leave it for that time period that they tell you have to in order to interpret this test. If you don't, you might wind up thinking you're having a baby and you're not. It's the same type of thing. So you have to wait. And then once you wait and you hit it in that window, then you can interpret the test. But of course, I don't have to, probably beat a dead horse on this. When you are doing these in rapid succession, back to back to back, there are errors that are made. You might take too much of a biological sample. You might take too little. You might leave the test too long. You might interpret it earlier. So you have these type of issues that exist that are well documented in the medical community. Well, for years, these have been used in, as they say, these areas that have been dealing with infectious disease, your Ebola, Listeria, malaria. You look at Rwanda. Rwanda's got a population of 12 million people. 6 million of them have malaria or dealing with that. So these are huge issues, much more severe than what we're dealing now on a day-to-day basis. And they've been relying on these tests in those areas for 25 years. This is how you test at point of care. And you test often, and you test as much as possible, and that's how you test and screen and ensure that you can control the outbreak of these pandemics. But as I say, the problems, the twofold problems that we have in the westernized world, or where you see more advanced medicine, are one, it's a manual test, which doesn't exist now. If you're familiar, you go to the doctor, you get a blood test, they take those vacutators, they whip a sticker on it, an RFID, or they put a barcode on it. It goes to the lab. A computer analyzes that. The data is in the computer, and it comes back to you, and you know what your results are. These don't fit that model, and that model is very close to the heart of our medical system. Here in the U.S. or in Canada, if you're getting a test done, somebody's paying for it. And people want to know who's paying for it. And the government, if they're covering it, they want to know who's been tested. They want to know what the results are. They want to know who did it. They want to know it's been done under the correct circumstances, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So these tests, although they've been the standard throughout the world, in North America, they're a new requirement. It's what you have to have in order to test properly. What this device is, the FeelNet device, has been developed to answer those.
So that's your technology, this FeelNet device.
That's right. So this device here, this has been developed so that you have what is essentially a universal device. You can probably see that there's a shelf here on the side of the device. I just grabbed this off the side of the lab, so I hope it's not breaking anything here. But there's a shelf on the side here, and it's a universal shelf. So you can stick in any size RDT test. If it's approved by the government and uploaded to the system, the device can use it. The device takes about 30 seconds to read one of these tests. And when working with the rest of our broader system, you deploy this device with approved tests by any manufacturer that's approved. It can test influenza A, influenza B, COVID, malaria, listeria, HIV, you name it. It can test it. If it's on a lateral flow test, our system works for it or can work for it. And now you use this device, and this device automatically, once you go through the process, it guides you when the tests are ready to be inserted into the device. You insert the test, 30 seconds, that records the test, actually takes a picture of the test, records all of the data related to the test. If there's writing on the side of the cartridge, if there's a note, it's a full recording and tracking and tracing technology. Seconds, you can discard that test. The technician can see it, read it, and you're on to the next test. And you can run through just like a manufacturing line. Run tests through. They're checked for errors. They are interpreted if that's approved in the region that you're using it, and they record. And you can automatically report later in the day if you need to report for compliance purposes to a government or a regulatory organization. You can have automatic reporting or basically what is automated recording of the data, and you're basically wrap that lab-based analysis around something that has been used in the field and used as a very archaic kind of simple form of testing for the last 25 years.
Okay, so basically, your technology essentially allows for the rapid testing. So in other words, it does the interpretation of the test, and most importantly, it sends the data out. Again, we're dealing with infectious diseases. There's various agencies, et cetera, that track these things, and so this is very so this is done in the field. So what's the size of this opportunity? Because look, you're what you're doing is far beyond COVID. So what's the size of the market opportunity that you're looking at?
Look, the size, it's hard to put a number on this because I'll tell you, right now we are still it's not anything that we enjoy saying, but I mean, we are still in the thick of COVID, and a vaccine is not going to be out at the scale that is needed tomorrow to not worry anymore about these testing and screening. And the world is a big place. So whether or not Canada or the US or certain countries are vaccinated, the rest of the world is not and won't be for some time. And because of that, we need to test, and we need to test as much as possible. And the more we test, the more we get results, the more data we have, the better we will be at deploying a vaccine, making certain decisions around how we're going to deal with these things, travel restrictions, shutting down businesses, these type of things. Those decisions become much more, qualified once you have the data to do them. And so, number one, when we talk about the potential of this and the potential of this product, even in the eye of COVID, just COVID, which maybe we have 4 years of testing for COVID left in various degrees, we have a tremendous market opportunity here, a huge value potential. But second to that, and we can, unfortunately, we can share this, or I can share this anonymously, but in speaking with representatives from our federal government, this is like a September 11th type event. You had a day, a spot in time where something happened that hadn't happened before, and it was really something that was a defining moment in our generation, and it changed the way that we think about our travel restrictions, about security, privacy. It changed all those things. It changed them forever. I mean, today, now, 20 years ago, or 20 years later, we're still doing the same things that were implemented after that, after September 11th and the terrorist attacks that happened there. It changed the way that we think about things. And COVID is the same. This has changed the way that we think about things and will change the way that we look at sharing our medical data, look at our privacy related to medical issues. You got to ask yourself, do you want to get on that airplane if you don't know that everybody on the plane has tested negative for COVID or for COVID 20 or for COVID 21 or for H1N1 2. These type of things, are going to really set the course of the next probably 20 years, where we're going to have systems and infrastructures in place to deal with them. And our system as a universal device can do that. And when the next issue comes out, and this device is at a workplace, or on a cruise ship, or in an airport, whatever it is, as soon as you have a rapid diagnostic test to test for it, you can deploy it on our device. So the opportunity is enormous, this is more of an infrastructure play for the future of how we're going to deal with pandemic response than it is just an opportunistic kind of COVID product.
Okay, so let's jump into some audience questions. First, I want to say, so what's the business model? How do you how do you make money with this?
So the business model is we deploy these devices, and remember, this is a system. So there's software, there's other devices that can be attached to the system, implemented PCR, other testing platforms. Really, this is a holistic system. The model is that we basically do a per test model. You're going to deploy this. You're going to use our solution, and for that, we're going to deploy our devices. You can use our software. You can control and transmit the data, house the data on our system, and we charge a per test business model. So we're taking a piece of high volume test usage. That's how it works.
Let's see. Okay, Derek, I just want to unmute your mic because I want to okay. So we're running out of time. Clark, we're gonna have you back probably later in the week, because I want to have some extensive Q&A, and we're almost out of time. I want to actually ask this question to Derek, because this is my favorite question. I want to know is, look, what's the catalyst? What is going to get this stock to, let's say, $5, $10? What needs to happen? What kind of value needs to be created? What kind of revenues do you need? Derek, you want to start off with that, because you're an investor in the company. You wrote a check for $3 million. So what's your investment thesis?
Well, let's get to over $1 first, which I think will happen relatively soon. But I think as the world around us starts seeing what this technology does and how it gives the real-time delivery that is really needed to track all this stuff. I'm here right now. If I want to go back to Canada right now, I need to do a test. I got to go quarantine in a hotel and pay $2,000 or whatever it is. They just don't have the infrastructure right now to really get the world moving again. And with these guys here, getting this digital health pass up and rolling, and the dollar amount per test, it becomes staggering. And if I'm flying back, is $100, 10, I don't even know what it is, to get this so I can go back to life, I have no problem. And when you start seeing this fee being integrated, whether it's at an airport or on a cruise ship or all kinds of stuff, this is what's going to get the world back going again. So it's staggering. Think about how many people travel around the world, or even domestically in the United States, on a daily basis. This is going to become the new norm for the foreseeable future. So you can put the numbers together, but it could add up really quickly. And you start putting multiples on this, the PE ratios, what we're used to in the world of stocks. That's how you get to $5. I don't know if that answers the question, but essentially, I think the revenues start ramping up relatively quickly. And I'm here. When I got involved in this deal on, I think, December 14th, the stock traded, I think, the year before about 50 million shares. Since December 14th to now, say 45 days or so, I think we traded 107 million, not including today. So seriously, and they know what's coming up. And in that period where we've been green probably 95% of the time, there hasn't been any news. So I'm waiting on Clark to come and deliver some stuff. I know the company's working hard on some big things. But once that starts coming out, you're not going to see these prices anymore. That's what I can say, my personal opinion as an investor.
Okay.
You can mark my words.
Okay. So actually, we're out of time. We're gonna catch up with you later in the week. Clark, I want to ask you, and maybe Derek, you want to pitch in. The favorite question we ask is, top 3 reasons why investors should consider Relay Medical today.
Top 3 reasons. Okay, I think number one, look at what
you can do 2, and Derek will do the last one.
Okay, perfect. Okay, well then I'll take the easy ones, I guess. I think really there's a lot of work that's been done here the last year that we hadn't seen factored in the valuation of the company. If you take a read, do your due diligence, look at what we have. We have multiple assets. We have one universal team, and we're showing now that we have the resources to execute. And for the first time, I can say in closing, we just closed $8.5 million, which Derek and his network participated in. We are cashed up. We have we've de-risked from that perspective. We've already put out news that demonstrates the value or potential value and the validation of what we're doing. And I think that there's more than one reason to invest in what we have. We're not a single asset company, and we're now in the position where, with the market and the capital that we have, we can execute on multiple assets and really drive value for our shareholders who've been with us for so long.
I want to have you back later because there's the core technology that you have. There's some real tremendous market opportunities I want to kind of get into, which go way beyond COVID, beyond infectious diseases.
Sure.
I think that's one of the big things. So we didn't even get a chance to go there. We'll do that next time. Derek, I guess you get a top reason. Clark gave us 2.
Well, aside from the fact that I'm involved and I have to keep my reputation stellar because I'm only good as my last pick. This company's one contract away from being in the headlines, in my opinion. And I think once you start seeing contracts roll in, it catches like wildfire, right? And you'll just see more and more start story. I think that's why I'm here. I think this is real. This isn't a one-trick pony like earlier. This isn't selling Lysol wipes or Chinese-made COVID tests. This is real stuff. AI technology in the digital world, and it's not going away. And when COVID hopefully goes away and we're back to normal, this company will still be around with a whole other portfolio of medical technologies that will be the gift that keeps giving. So that's why I'm here.
I'm going to ask one. Actually, we're going to do one audience question. We ran out of time. Josh was asking, what are the next milestones and catalysts? Great question.
Well, I think, look, obviously some of those we can't speak of, but I think, look, I expect that Glow LifeTech going public, leaving Relay Medical just as a minority asset going public, and what is happening there will be definitely drive some value. Catalysts are we're now, we've been scaling up. We told the market that we're scaling up. We need to get our technology to market, but also have the ability to feed the market because the demand is enormous. And that's what we've been working very hard on. And I think that now that we're getting to operationalizing properly and at scale, that we're going to start demonstrating and showing that this is very it's a very timely thing we found ourselves in. So stay tuned. We just closed the capital. That allows us to really accelerate some things and start manufacturing at higher volumes and filling bigger orders. And we can't wait to tell the market about it.
Fantastic. Okay, guys, thank you very much. I'm sorry we ran out of time. We're gonna have you back for like where we're gonna have like an hour. We're gonna have a lot of Q&A. So I'll catch up with you probably later in the week.
Thanks, Jack. Thank you, Derek. Thanks for your support and
Clark.
Appreciate it.
Okay. We're gonna get these guys back. A lot of questions we can get a chance to get into. Okay, so let's get ready for our next presenter, AIML. Tim.
How are you?
Okay, fantastic.
Good to see you again. How are you?
Great. Now we're gonna do something unique today. We're gonna do like a show and tell demo of the technology at work, right?
Exactly.
Okay. So we have Randy. Randy, can you turn on your camera or your mic? Randy is the CEO. Randy.
Correct.
Okay, hang on. You're the chairman. You're the chairman.
Randy is the CEO.
Okay, so just because everybody's met you, they haven't met Randy yet. Randy. Okay, so there's some Randy. If you could connect your camera or your mic, so it's showing as not connected right now. Randy, what's live television? Tim, you have a way of getting a hold of Randy, seeing what's going on? You want to give him a call?
Do. Actually, let me track him down and see. He said that he could see you there, so let's see.
Okay, I don't see him.
Let me just give him a quick shout. Sorry about this.
Yeah.
I can. Yes. So apparently, Jack is not seeing video or hearing you. Right. Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Stand by, everybody. It'll be worth it.
So can you run off the mobile then? Yeah, sorry, Jack. Okay. So log in anyway, and then hopefully Telus will be back up shortly. Yeah. Okay. But let's see, Jack. Can you hear Randy now?
Randy, can you say something? No, I don't. His everything is none of his devices are connected.
Okay.
So,
okay.
Something's happening.
Can you hear me?
Okay. Keep trying there.
Randy.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
I hear you. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So you can hear me at least. I can tell you what's going on here. So Telus has an outage in my district. So I'm running my computer off of a mobile hotspot.
Okay.
And so I'm obviously having an issue here on the video.
So okay, we gotta get you into a first world country. That's what needs.
It's the first time I've had this in like 10 years, and so I'm sorry about the outage here on the wireline.
Okay.
But,
so what we're gonna do is I think we need to share. We're gonna share your desktop because we're gonna show. This is like a little show and tell. Now I see we have Nolan. Nolan is one of the. He's not on the stream, but he's.
Yeah. So there, I think.
Okay, Nolan. Okay. I see a desktop. Yeah. Now, if you can, basically, I think he's gonna have to share the. I think we're sharing the application, right? Or share. Yeah. We can do this.
I can share. Okay, so I can share screen. So I've got audio, and we've got the share screen, so I can talk to this, and then we'll carry on from there.
Are we going to be able to do the demo though? Because I want to show that demo.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. So I'm going to take this off for a second. I'm going to take this, and if you can just change the what do you call it? So the app. So if Nolan can share the. Oh, I think I see what you're doing. Okay, I think I see.
Yeah. So I've got the share screen, so I can speak to it.
Hold on a second. We're looking at the actual. That's the actual real-time data.
This is the mobile application. And so what I want to talk to just for really fast.
This is getting the data from Tim right now. Yeah.
This is actually showing the application, and so I'm not going to do like a live capture because there's a bit of a setup and the rest of it. But I can show you basically the video capture, and I'll run it for you, and I'll speak to it. And it's a little quicker to get through, so it's just frankly a little bit easier rather than showing all the steps. Okay.
You know what? Let's do this. Okay, so let's what I'd like to do is I'd like to have then. By the way, everybody, so stand by. This is again, we're working. This is live TV, so to speak. So, okay, so what we're going to instead today, I thought we were going to do a live demo, but if we can't do that, I think what we'll do is we'll just have, because we haven't seen the full story in the deck, if you can kind of run us through that, and then we're going to open Q&A, because I think we're going to have a lot of questions. I'm hoping we're going to...
Yeah, I'd be happy to do that, and like I'll spend like less than 5 minutes on this deck outline. I know Tim's certainly talking, and I'll do the demo with it, so you can see that.
And can you? Okay, so just for the deck, if you can just show the full slide, like the sidebar, if you can close out that kind of sidebar, the I guess preview, whatever that is.
Yeah, absolutely, sure.
Just the main slide. Okay, perfect, exactly like that. And if you want to pop up the device, okay, so you're welcome. Okay, so I'm gonna I'm going to basically do a quick intro here for anybody that's tuning in now, and we can get started. Okay, so we're kind of technically challenged, but so welcome everybody to Wall Street Reporters Investors Discovery Day, February 9th, 2021. We are back with AIML, exciting company in the health tech space. I think, or actually, I was expecting we were going to do a demo, so we're going to have the live demo next time. But we're going to have Randy Duguay, the CEO of the company. He's going to kind of give us the presentation. His internet can't see him. Next time we'll see him next time. We can and put up for Q&A. We're going to find out, what's in the pipeline here. What's going to make this stock a potentially $5 stock. Kind of what I think everybody wants to know. So with that said, Randy, why don't you kind of take it away and give us what's the story here?
Absolutely. I'll do like the 5-minute run through on a pitch deck. So really pleased to be here. I'm the CEO of HealthGauge, a key part of the AIML Innovations assets. And really pleased to talk to you about our company, about smarter health and fitness. We're a leading digital health solutions provider, and we're really poised to make a big impact on helping people improve their lives using the latest generation of wearable tech, artificial intelligence-based platform solution, and new sensors. And it's a massive market. When you think about the wearable and digital health space with AI innovations, it's worth over $245 billion annually. And we've created a unique solution that has a high quality digital capture of physiological information, AI-based software assets that it ties together behavioral tagging to help people in really improving their health as they go forward. So when you think about what's happening today, there's significant health costs, and people really don't have enough awareness and understanding of their current health state. Current devices and remote patient monitoring, they're really, well understood, but people aren't really using them, or they're not understanding them. And they're certainly not really integrated in with solutions that can help inform them. So to really start to bring forward machine intelligence solutions. So we're living in an age where, frankly, the kinds of software, the kinds of devices that we hold in our hands and tying in with good physiological data capture, we can actually make that data more useful. We can actually put the machines to work in helping us understand our current state. As a case example, heart disease affects over 100 million people in North America alone, 1.5 billion people worldwide, and there's over 400,000 deaths annually. And that costs the healthcare system in the United States $50 billion a year. That's the healthcare system. And it doesn't even account for the personal costs of people's lives and, of course, the deaths that occur. So this is one case example. When we think about the opportunity in digital health platform solutions such as ours, it's much more, which goes much beyond that. There's lots of research that really speaks to the point that if we are monitoring and if we are understanding and being supported in our health outcomes and objectives, we will and can improve our health. Now, not everybody is motivated by that idea, but there are a great number of people. Of course, we're seeing an expanding market in these areas. Our solution, and I want to really focus on the center point here, is really about the cloud-based assets and artificial intelligence, machine learning tools. And there's a lot of companies talking about these things, but there's really very few out there that actually have the capabilities to build the team, to build the competencies, and really tap into those data sources And it isn't just about tapping into any kind of data source, which is why we actually have our own device, and we have our own software assets that are really specific to the data capture. And I'll show you that is really important in how we're applying our both machine learning on the refinement of data, as well as artificial intelligence on actually mining that data and providing feedback and responsiveness and alerts that are both used by care providers as well as the individuals. So I really want to show you, I'm going to show you just this really quick outline on the demo. And I could show you this live, but this is a little faster. This is the mobile application. So it's the piece here in the middle. And we have a device that actually captures this data. So here's an example of the solution. And we have a weight scale. We can do sleep monitoring, stress, heart rate variability, distance tracking, plus blood pressure. So here's an example of actual capture. And I could show you this on my wrist right now. It does exactly the same thing. And what we do here is we actually capture the blood pulse. It's called photoplasmography. But frankly, what it is it's a digital pulse. And we actually can dissect that digital signal. Virtually every other company throws all of this data away. We can actually take that digitized signal and we can pair that additionally with an electrocardiogram, which I'm going to show you here, the blood pressure measure. So here's an example of a blood pressure estimation non-invasive method using electrocardiogram, single contact off the wrist, plus the digital pulse together. So you'll see this refining. And this is a really important kind of example that people can do whenever they want. And we can tag our physiological information to events. I'm actually dealing with a bit of a health issue right now, for example. So I may be taking a medication. I can start to track my medications. I can track my pain events. I can track what I'm doing from a behavior aspect, from exercise or so on. So that's an example of how the solution works just on that one kind of data set. We're going to be looking at all sorts of other kinds of data sets as we go forward. So I'll go back here. So the solution includes a wearable, and we have a device. So this device here is actually what we'll be marketing a bit later this year. Competes great with all the best of the devices out there. Very specific to health, mobile application, online applications. I could show you that here today too. And underlying the online application again is an AI and machine learning based software asset. We actually work with the University of Alberta supercomputing to refine on our neural nets, so we can actually start to look at individual types of diagnostics as we go forward into the future. So again, devices, software solutions with a number of biometric core data sets, behavioral tagging, and then cloud-based infrastructure, which I've talked about earlier, and we can integrate that into other kinds of EMR, electronic medical record, or hospital record systems using an HL7 FHIR-based interface. This shows you a bit of our work on validation, and what this is really showing you is that with the increasing number of data sets, we can refine our solution over time and make it more personalized. A bit on the competitive dynamic, and we think about companies and solutions like ours. I like to talk about the Uber metaphor, and the Uber metaphor isn't just like a word. It's something you really have to understand. In the Uber metaphor, there's a driver and a rider. In the digital health metaphor, it's the exact same thing. People are really looking to get to a destination of better health outcomes and to get there sooner. When we think about all the companies and the activities that are happening out there in the digital space, we see IoT companies, digital data aggregators, virtual services companies, AI companies, and mobile applications companies. When we think about the Uber metaphor, what we're building at HealthGauge is actually a system which is very much about like building that end-to-end stack solution that optimizes the data flow so you can smooth those transactions that connect people sooner so they can actually work on their health objectives and arrive on outcomes sooner. So that includes providing for connections to healthcare professionals as well as an ability to share information on a more regular basis. So again, global markets over $245 billion a year. that is going to continue to increase. And the CV-19 pandemic, well, it's been a really hard thing for the world. What's been great, actually, is it's really exposed both the gaps and the opportunities for companies like ours, and that's why we're getting great attention right now on partnering and working with a lot of care providers in the United States and Canada. The channel strategy is, people might think that there's a consumer play here. There is, but for us, we're really, really interested in the B2B kind of opportunities and working with healthcare service delivery organizations that are providing value add. And so we actually have a number of partners that we're working with, and a number here are identified. I don't have relationships with everybody in here. I do have relationships with some of the organizations here, but it gives you a sense of the channel strategy in that these organizations are close to people in their communities and at homes and how they can actually provide health services. But they need monitoring, they need more intelligence, and they need more connection. And that's what we can do with our solution. The channel and market strategy is here's an example of the channel strategies working with those service providers, and a strategy also working with health payers and benefits providers that it can be reimbursable or can work with health services plan providers. And some of the organizations that we're working with, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation on a special use case focusing on eclampsia, hypertension condition in pregnant women, Blue Cross and Sun Life focusing on interests in chronic care and seniors living, and the new MedRoad solution that we'll talk about another time, which is just an incredible connection for us in working with doctors' offices. The long term, of course, or the next 3 years, our pro forma objective is to achieve $20 million annual revenue. Ongoing R&D plans. We're going to continue to work on growing our AI assets and working with certain activities with the University of Alberta and supercomputing. So I think I'll wrap there and just pass it back to you, Jack, if there's any questions for the team.
Okay, Randy, I'm sorry we couldn't get you on camera and the internet wasn't, because I wanted to show the demo with Tim. It would have been a very cool demo. We're gonna have to do this next time. And we got some fantastic. We got to have you back with the camera working. We got to run through the slides because there's some amazing information there. We got to really dive into. I want to ask you guys a question. Ask Tim. Ask you, Randy, a question, and then I want to do an audience question. And we're gonna have to wrap it up because we're gonna be out of time. And I want to come back when everything is working because the demo is. What we saw on the screen was actually very impressive. You can actually see the kind of technology at work. So I think one of the big things that's important right now for investors, I think, to focus on is the validation that you're getting, the technology validation that you're getting from. You got some government grants, the Bill Melinda Gates Foundation. That's gotten involved. So I mean, I think that's a big deal. I mean, in other words, the takeaway is what that they see the technology as valuable. Yeah,
absolutely. And the validation isn't just a question on the clinical aspects of it, but actually the way it works within the clinical system. So there's a case example, Bill and Melinda Gates, where nurses are using that in a community setting, helping women avoid, frankly, pretty serious mortality issues. And there's so many examples like that. So the outcomes were fantastic. And I'll be actually doing a presentation later this year, a special event, speaking to those points.
Okay, let's do a few audience questions, and I'm gonna have you. Randy, we got to get you back with the camera. People need to see what you look like, and we got to see that.
I tried to get it fixed today. It was just
Oh, it's okay. This part what makes these things fun. I want a couple of questions here. KV is asking, does this application device trigger any alarms or warnings if a person is experiencing AFib?
Yeah, AFib is actually it's almost really a table stake for a solution like ours, and so absolutely we can address AFib alerting and recognition, but there's many more things beyond that we can do.
Next question: does it show actual PQRST wave? of heart. What is the PQRST? If you can explain that, I don't know.
Well, if you want to share a screen, I can show you an actual example of that. So just here, just do a share screen. There you go.
Hang on.
Share screen.
Okay, let's go back to. Okay, that's the sharing screen, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so there you can see there what he's talking about is an electrocardiogram, and the PQRST actually is just one of these signals here. And so the answer is yes. But here you can see, and you can do this across any number of events. So here's a data set, bunch of data sets that we've got. And so you can start to look at that now across the spectrum. And absolutely.
So this basically, so Randy, what you're showing us is what the doctor would see for the healthcare provider on the other end receiving the data. This is their dashboard.
Absolutely. So there's a bunch of other kinds of assets in here that the doctor can see. And this has never really been accessible before because people's devices haven't been doing this.
Okay, we got to get you back next week. We got to show. It's going to be amazing because what we want to do is we're going to show. Originally, the idea was we're going to show Tim. Tim, you're in Vancouver, right?
No, actually, I'm over in Europe right now.
Oh, you're in Europe right now? Okay. So Tim is in Europe, and he's wearing the device. And what we were going to do is we were going to show the data popping up on Randy's computer. Randy, where are you right now?
I'm in Edmonton.
You're in Edmonton. So in Edmonton, this is amazing. So this basically shows the possibilities of this, to be used globally, really.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and the thing to remember too on technologies like this, they fit into a larger ecosystem, and so we're working with organizations that are actually working with clinical labs as well as doctors' offices. And so just imagine, you can do a 12-lead ECG. We can actually start to associate the single contact ECG and wrist wearables to other kinds of diagnostics, and not to replace what's going on in clinics or labs, but to start to support a more ongoing kind of analysis. That again does not exist today.
Okay, Tim, I don't want to ask you too many questions because we got like killer visuals here, and we gotta get okay. So we're gonna have you back ASAP to show like everything. We're gonna run through the demo and everything. Let's see. I want to ask two last questions, and then okay. So for AI, okay, will this work with all wearable tech? What about Garmin? Can you get data from Garmin?
A really good question, and so we're pretty, obviously we're aware of the world, and so some of the big manufacturers, I won't even mention. There's one in particular that reached out to us, and so they're actually seeing our application, and I love that your community is recognizing that this is a software play, and that's why I use the Uber metaphor, because absolutely we can make our solution available on those kinds of devices. Where those partners are quite willing and open to providing the data sets and the data access.
Yeah. Okay.
So I understand that there's literally hundreds of companies right now that have the ability to aggregate the data through their wearable solutions, and we're agnostic towards that. We really don't care how the data is aggregated as long as it's high quality data. Our sweet spot is taking that data, aggregating it, applying our artificial intelligence and machine learning to create some actionable, usable solutions to the user and their care providers.
That's right.
What kind of response have you received from physicians with respect to your technology?
I love that question, and I've been in the business a long time now, like 20 years in digital health in particular. And doctors, doctors have been heads down for frankly decades. But look at what happened here in the last 2 years. Doctors now can do work from home that they couldn't do before. So they're really interested in new solutions, both these kinds of solutions, but other kinds of devices. And we're going to bring all of that forward. We can make that very accessible. So doctors want to see these solutions progress.
KB is asking, is this something that could be implemented in hospital settings?
Interesting question. And I could get a little personal here. I actually was in the hospital here 2 days ago, and I was using my device in the hospital just for my own purposes. So you have to understand, people have an interest, and hospitals aren't stopping me from capturing my own health information, and so it's all useful.
Okay, excellent. All right, we're out of time. We're gonna have to have you guys back. This is some amazing stuff. We got to get this ASAP. So, all right, Tim, Randy, I'll catch up with you probably later in the week because we got to run this demo. It's amazing stuff.
Okay, sounds good, Jack.
Thank you, guys.
We'll be back. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, we got to see this ASAP. Thank you, guys.
Right. Thank you.
Okay, wow. This would have been an amazing demo. I am sorry we're not able to show it. That's what happens with live. So everything today, we got between internet, everything else. So hopefully our next presenter is going to be everything is going to be working there. Let's get Novamind on here. Novamind, Yaron.
Hey, Jack, how are you?
Fantastic. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, thanks.
Excellent. So let me just want to get things set up here. The good news is your internet is working, right?
Yeah, it is working. I have a colleague of mine who's going to share his screen for the deck, so I don't have to deal with it. If you can just make sure that he has access.
Okay, hang on. Let's see. Okay,
I see the deck, so we're getting places.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so before that, I'm gonna kind of do a quick intro here, and then I'm gonna leave it to the deck. I think the ideas for today is what we want to do is okay. So
can you just give me a moment? I want to make sure my heads and my phones are working right.
Okay, we got a very psychedelic image behind you.
Great. I'm glad to hear it's perceived as psychedelic.
You know what I'd like to do is, can we get? I want to get you like right in the middle of the screen, so like you're centered, like so we're at eye level with you. Okay, like that. Yeah, perfect.
I'm having just, can you guys hear me? Okay.
Yeah. Perfect. Okay.
Great.
Hang on a second. Let me just make sure everything is working here. Okay. And just actually back to where you were before, just in kind of line up. I guess drop the camera down a little bit. Okay, perfect. Okay, I think everything is working. Okay, good. Okay, welcome everybody to Wall Street Reporter's Investors Discovery Day live stream, February 9th, 2021. We are back with Novamind NM on the TSXV. Again, this is one of the most exciting companies in the psychedelic healthcare space. It's kind of a brand new area that's emerging. We're going to find out what the company's doing, what the opportunity is. And again, the idea is, look, we're looking for those stocks which have a 10x to 100x upside potential. So these are companies going after massive market opportunities. They have multiple catalysts in place, and they're at a key inflection point right now where we could see value created, as we've seen for the past 12 months. We've had numerous stocks increase 500% to 1,000%, 2,000%. And so the idea is we're gonna see Yaron. He's gonna share the story with us, the Novamind story. And after he's done, please ask your questions. That's what this is all about. Ask your questions and then decide for yourself if Novamind is going to be that next 10 bagger. So with that said, Yaron, let me get your slides up on the screen here. And
great. Okay, we'll get started. We can advance to the next slide, please. I'm looking forward to sharing, obviously, the details on Novamind and explaining to people exactly why we've been growing so quickly, but also to provide context to the audience about the size of this market and some of the fundamental things that are creating really a total systemic change in mental health. And resulting from that are multi-billion-dollar market opportunities. Some of the most recent numbers. I was reading a Canaccord Genuity report. If people are familiar, that's a fairly well-known investment bank focused on growth companies, and they were sizing the market for psychedelics in terms of displacing in terms of displacing the pharmaceutical alternatives, the standard of care that exists right now, that's a $50 billion market on its own. And that doesn't include essentially the markets where no therapies, no drugs, or few exist. And in those markets, which I'll talk about a bit later, you're talking about expanding that opportunity to over $100 billion. So I'm just sharing some of the data that's being reported widely in the industry. And I'm going to spend some time talking about the details of this massive market opportunity that we're growing in right now. So the company highlights page to start with, we are operating right now a clinic of outpatient mental health networks. So we have 4 of them in operation, and we're expanding pretty quickly. So that people understand there are compounds and alternative health modalities available today, things beyond traditional talk therapy, that are legal and that we've been offering for years. So I'll talk about that spectrum of alternatives that we provide people today and how that model is going to grow when new psychedelic compounds come online. We're specialized in ketamine-assisted psychotherapy today. We also operate using other alternative modalities that I'll talk about. And of course, we've announced some news recently. If your listeners and audience want to look at our news releases available on our website, that we had 20,000 client visits over 2020, and that was a 100% increase over 2019. So again, very actively serving this growing market and meeting that demand that we only see increasing. If we can skip to the next slide, please. So this slide, and I'll maybe before I get into the details of our business, which is these are the 3 pillars of our business and how we're serving people today in psychedelic medicine. And I'll take a moment to give context for the size of the market we're addressing. If you look at mental health today or mental health in the past and compare it to the new paradigm that we're working on, you can characterize mental health today as stigmatized. There's obviously few alternatives that work. The standard of care isn't working. And in fact, changing your consciousness is illegal. So this is the world that I'm describing that we live in today. And the world will look very, very different just a few years from now. And if you understand our model, already looking different. So to contrast what I just described, imagine a world where mental health, at least the stigma around mental health, is being softened. And I think everybody is aware of that and feeling that through COVID. And if you consider that new alternatives are available, and if you consider that now changing your consciousness becomes a fundamental human right. And that's actually, I'm borrowing there from Rick Doblin, who's the founder and leader of MAPS, who really put this industry on track and to change mental health fundamentally. And the point is, everybody should have as a frame of reference that the world of mental health is changing such that when you go to a clinic in the future seeking help, you'll have access to a range of modalities, as I've talked about, and you'll have things like ketamine, things like MDMA, things like psilocybin, some of the things we'll talk about. And our clinics are established now and operating, so when those things come online, we're able immediately to serve that multi-billion-dollar market that I've been describing. So with that context for the new world of mental health, Novamind is operating now. I mentioned our network of mental health clinics. The brand is Cedar Psychiatry. To the right is our clinical research platform. This is a dedicated organization whose clients are pharmaceutical companies and other drug developers. And that brand is Cedar Clinical Research, which I'll talk more about that work shortly. And our retreat network, which we've made some investments early. Again, the approach for us is to treat people today. And we can, in fact, refer people to the Netherlands where it's legal, and we can provide people access to a medically supervised, safe experience today. If we can go to the next slide, please. Great. So this map really demonstrates what I've been talking about, and I'm not sure where your listeners are, but this is how you provide alternative mental health modalities today. The dots that you see in Utah, the first one represents our 4 operating clinics. We're operating in the Salt Lake area because our partner, Dr. Reed Robison, who's now our Chief Medical Officer, founded those clinics there. He also founded Cedar Clinical Research. So we'll be expanding outside of Utah, and you'll be seeing news flow from us pretty soon on that front. But that's the reason we started in Utah, and I'll talk a lot more about Dr. Robison, who's a thought leader in psychedelic medicine, very well known. Cedar Clinical Research is also there on the map, again run by Dr. Robison. He led the clinical trials for Spravato, which is a ketamine drug from Janssen, which I'll talk about, and has a pretty significant track record. He's also a coordinating investigator on the MDMA phase 3 trial sponsored by MAPS currently. So this is the base that we're working from, and those organizations, both the clinical research footprint and the mental health clinics, are expanding very quickly. The other dots on the map, I've mentioned the Netherlands. It is a legal jurisdiction for psilocybin, and again, we operate only where we can offer legal, medically supervised experiences, meeting the standard of care that we provide in our clinics in the US. And the other dot on the map you'll see is in Costa Rica, where we've established our own retreat platform. Again, these are therapeutic retreats, so it's the same standard of care that you'd get in a clinic, but it's in a different setting, which I'll describe in a bit, and that enables different kind of work to be done. So on this page, you see how we're operating today. You can envisage many more dots on the map, and I'll speak to expansion shortly. You can go to the next slide, please. This is, if there was any doubt, and no one should be taking my word for it. I assume everybody knows someone who's touched by mental health, but these are the headlines that we're seeing, and obviously the times we're living through. So we started investing in the space about 2 years ago, my partners and I, and we foresaw that essentially there was going to be this systemic change. We knew there was an opportunity to build a sustainable business around it, and that's why we started making investments and acquisitions 2 years ago. So that puts us in a really perfect position. Again, we're operating now. When you're reading this news flow and investing in drug development companies and seeing a lot of information that is, or opportunities at least, that rely on legalization of psychedelics, we're objectively differentiated from that. So we're going to offer the compounds legally where we can with the leading edge therapeutics, and this is this new paradigm. These headlines, I think, are evidence of that I've described, where our kids will grow up in a different world, where it will be a fundamental human right to change their consciousness, and they'll be able to go about that in a safe and responsible way, much like you've seen in cannabis regulation, also stigmatized prior to very recent changes. Let's go on to the next slide, please. Listed here are some of the benchmark drugs that people should be familiar with, broadly speaking, in psychedelic medicine, and we're going to refer to some of them, so it's worth mentioning them and people to get familiar. Ketamine we've talked about, so I just want your audience to differentiate between ketamine-assisted psychotherapy, which is where we specialize and have for 5 years. We don't administer ketamine without the therapy. So it's essentially the first legal psychedelic where you can have transformative experiences using a dissociative compound. And when that's combined with the correct therapy and integration protocols, again, which Reid Robison, our CMO, is widely known for, you can have really tremendous results, and that's what we've had. So ketamine really is defined in our terms as ketamine-assisted psychotherapy. It requires trained therapists, and we are leaders in the space. Spravato I've talked about. It's in fact the first insured form of ketamine and the first prescription ketamine drug. And as I mentioned, Cedar Clinical Research led the clinical trials in Utah for Spravato, and that was our client with Janssen. And we have a lot of experience. You'll be hearing more news flow from us as we add clinical research sites and clinical research trials. It's a very exciting part of our business, and that wave of capital and that you see going into drug development, that drug development needs to happen at specialized sites. So that's a very unique part of the value chain that we play. MDMA and psilocybin, I think people are fairly familiar with, and we can talk about more in some detail later, and I'll move to the next slide. I'm going to get into our outpatient mental health clinic network. Some of the details on this page. The brand, again, is Cedar Psychiatry. It's been operating since 2016. We've recently started looking at our operating data from 2020. and announcing certain of the operating statistics. We haven't released financials yet, but year over year, we've announced that the client visits doubled from 10,000 to 20,000. So again, we all read a lot about this, and people's sort of anecdotal experiences maybe, or observations that demand for alternative mental health is up. Well, I can tell you as the CEO of a company who operates 4 clinics that have been specialized in alternative mental health modalities for 5 years, we're absolutely seeing that in the numbers. So we've also announced some interesting segmented data where specific to, for example, Spravato that I mentioned is the first insured form of ketamine. That means insurance companies will cover it. That's up over 400% year over year for us, that segment. So it's real data that reflects what's going on in the real world and what some of us are feeling. And most people don't know that these alternative mental health clinics exist. That is that when they go to a typical mental health clinic, they're only offered cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, or maybe they're offered psychiatric prescription management from a psychiatrist. But the spectrum of services that we're specialized in that we'll add to things like CAP, Spravato, TMS, psilocybin when it's legal, and MDMA when it's legal. These are the things that people will have access to, again, to change their own consciousness in a safe place on their terms. And there's a huge demand curve building there, no question about it. And that's where you'll see the growth in Cedar Psychiatry clinics. You'll watch our news, you'll see growth outside, as I said, in the US, outside of the US as well. And obviously our ambitions are to be the leading clinic company. I'll mention again in the context of why we're building so quickly these alternative mental health clinics that really don't have a precedent for a model. You'll find some clinics, companies out there maybe specialize in one of them, for example, TMS, and they'll have a lot of TMS clinics. But to have the type of specialization we have, not only in providing the alternatives, but the experienced therapists, because you have to have the experience, of course, as a provider with the knowledge to at the end of the day, you are trying to change lives and help people. So we take the market very seriously. We're not selling widgets, we're helping people. But it's very clear from the data, both in our work in clinical trials and the fact that we have these growing clinics ahead of everybody else, really, that we're one of the best, if not the best position, as far as people who want to trust a safe experience where the therapists and the psychiatrists have experience and the infrastructure has been built over time. Well, that's Cedar Psychiatry. So you can expect to see a lot of those clinics to serve the demand that we're seeing all over the world, in fact. There's a couple of highlights on the slide, which I've spoken to. I'll move to the next slide, and we'll go into Cedar Clinical Research, in fact. So this is now the clinical research organization known as a CRO, a contract research organization, excuse me. We refer to it as a clinical research organization as well, because this is the center of research, and this is the brain trust for research at Novamind. And the significance of that is that this business goes very much hand in hand with our clinics business. Because we are being trained on the protocols, it's based on our involvement in the clinical trials. So I mentioned Dr. Reed Robison. Our CMO is a coordinating investigator for the MDMA trial. It's in fact a known bottleneck and very difficult for therapists to get trained on those protocols now. So that's an example of how our clinical research business lends itself and supports, in fact, our clinics business, because at the end of the day, the expectation is that clients will flow to the people with the most experience. Again, safety being of the utmost importance, and we will have that. It'll probably take a number of years for people to catch up to people like Reed and the people that he's training in our team, simply because of access. Not because we're any better for any subjective reason, but because we're involved in the trials and we're trained, and as soon as they're legal, we'll be ready. The research extends. I've mentioned some of the work, and if you look at the clinical trials right now that are going on at Cedar Clinical Research, there's 8. They range. So we serve world-leading pharmaceutical clients, pharmaceutical companies, excuse me. So that means, some of the top, let's say top 3 or top 5 pharmaceutical companies in the world. We serve not-for-profits. I've mentioned Dr. Robinson's involvement in the MDMA trial with MAPS, which is a not-for-profit. We also serve academic institutions. So University of Texas, Austin, you'll see there, and not-for-profits like the Ketamine Research Foundation, which were involved in a study involving ketamine used for end-of-life distress. So it's a spectrum of indications or mental health diseases that we are researching. We partner based on our expertise, again, because we've been involved in things like the Spravato trials. And you'll be hearing more news from us. We've got a pipeline of clinical trials that we're excited to announce to the public, and also that'll help us, again, with each clinical trial. We're going to develop that specialized experience, and if and when those drugs come to market, with each trial we add, it's essentially a new kind of help we can offer a patient. I'll skip to the next slide, please. Spend a moment on our retreat network. Unfortunately, in COVID, it's difficult to operate this business. But when COVID subsides and the world is a bit more normalized, we expect this to be a growth engine. Our retreat network is about extending our abilities in the clinic and bringing it to a therapeutic retreat environment. So what your audience can picture, these are not well known. Some people might be familiar with certain retreats, different geographic locations, maybe in Central or South America, maybe in other places. This is 100% medical. That's the difference, is that we have the medical supervision and we have the expertise, obviously, as I mentioned, in the clinics with a range of modalities. So we'll be replicating those experiences, but what is referred to in our industry, it's in a different set and setting, which means that the environment that you're having these experiences, physical environment changes, and that can have a big impact on outcomes. So one of the things actually I'm really excited about, and we'll see some news, is that we've developed a model for what we call a hybrid clinic retreat, and that is instead of having to travel, somewhere like the Netherlands or Latin America, as I mentioned, we're using the compounds that are legal in the United States now, and we're setting up a retreat, for example, in Park City, Utah. So if you can imagine a clinic in Salt Lake City where you can have great results and do a lot of work with clients, you're sort of limited at a certain point based on that set and setting. And if you do different type of work now in Park City, which is a world-class destination, a world-class in terms of nature environment, then you have the ability to do different kind of work using similar compounds and maybe different protocols. Right? So this is an example, and you'll see some of that news from us. We'll be providing, again, the idea is to treat people now and create access points for clients to start accessing these alternative therapeutic protocols. And the demand so far is overwhelming. We've only been public about a month, I should mention. So not many people are very familiar with our operating businesses. And we expect when that awareness grows, it's part of the reason we went public. You'll see that show up in demands for our specific brand at our specific clinics or retreats, as the case may be. We can move to the next slide, please. This slide introduces our management team, arguably our proudest slide. And I've talked a bit about Reid Robison, but he's truly a thought leader and a luminary in the space. And we're excited about a lot of the work he's doing. And we're going to continue to support that work, both on the research and clinician practices. We recently added a chief operating officer. I'm very excited to share the details. We put the news release out maybe 2 weeks ago, not even. So Pierre Boumansour is the former COO of Life Labs. And for those of your viewers who are probably in the US, most of them don't know the brand. In Canada, it's one of the largest medical services companies. It's a $1 billion annualized revenue business, and Pierre was the COO until 2019. So it's that kind of brain trust and that kind of thinking when I talk about, a estimated $100 billion market opportunity, as was estimated by Canaccord Genuity. to be a top player in the clinics business and the clinical research business, you really need to be able to scale infrastructure, and we're relying on people that have done that before. So Pierre's a good example of that. You'll also see on the right there to him is Adele LaFrance, is someone who's also a thought leader in psychedelic medicine. She's done a lot of work and she's very published. So we're continuing to do a lot of research with people like Adele. Again, from the beginning, for over 2 years now, we've been very successful at identifying the leading practitioners in psychedelic medicine and working with them to build these business models that you're seeing now. So whereas a thought leader like Reed Robison established the initial clinics, we're now adding obviously the capital and a lot of specialized human resources and infrastructure to provide only expanded services and more clinics. So we're building on a very successful model. Seneca Anderson, also on this page, who managed the administrative component. She helped build and found the clinics with Reed. And Prakash Goud, who's also a former equity research analyst, healthcare focused, and in fact started his career as a drug developer, brings unique experience. Nolan Ledusser has been with us from the very beginning, and we'll be adding more people. You should expect that's a priority for us. The market opportunity is so big that we've raised some capital now. We have over $10 million to work with at the moment. And it's really about allocating the capital to the clinics and the research sites to grow those businesses as quickly as we can. I'll move to the next slide, please. Our scientific advisory board. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. It relates mostly to our CEDAR clinical research work, but I encourage people to look at these bios and look these people up. You'll be hearing more about them and our involvement with them. There's very unique domain expertise here, psycho-oncology, eating disorders, and adolescence as well. So the idea is that we're working with this brain trust specifically to develop protocols and ways of treating markets in some cases where no alternatives exist. So drawing everyone's attention again to the size of the market for which no alternatives exist is very, very large. And that's different from displacing things like antidepressants or opioids. That's the market size that Canaccord Genuity estimated at $50 billion. And I'll put that to the side for just a moment. If you consider the other size of the market, Dr. Kaplan is a renowned eating disorders expert, and in fact, so is Reed Robison, our CMO. There is no drug today for anorexia. Okay, let's be clear, there is no treatment for anorexia. There exist acute treatment centers for people in very serious cases of need and care, but there is no therapy that's approved or drug that's provided to help these people. This is the, I think, hundreds of billions market opportunity where we can create protocols, and we're doing some of this now. So if you use a compound, for example, like ketamine or psilocybin or MDMA, and you pair it with a particular protocol, you can have some extraordinary success. And I'm being specific because we're already doing that in the lab, and we've developed, we're going to be developing protocols. We're not a drug developer, to be clear, but we're going to be developing protocols to address this 100+ billion white space that I'm referring to. So to make it clear to everybody on the line, that means that if there's no drug, for example, anorexia being the indication I just spoke about, if we're able to bring a therapeutic protocol to market and the infrastructure to help those people, then there's a very, very large market that was not served at all before. And we're essentially creating new ways to serve these markets and unlocking brand new markets. So it's not only displacing the old markets, it's this white space of creating new markets. And it's really, really exciting. I mentioned, did some of this work on a particular protocol where we designed a protocol using ketamine, and we treated people with anorexia and major depressive disorder, and we'll be releasing some data on that soon. We had some great results. So the future is very, very bright because CCR, CEDAR Clinical Research, our clinical research platform, has the infrastructure and the experience to develop these protocols and bring them to the world. And instead of a business model that requires us, the business model that's really the only one that's understood, that requires drug developers to spend a lot of money and time and then sell pills effectively. This white space is characterized by therapeutic protocols where you're providing experiences. Okay, so the drugs, in this case, psychedelic compounds like MDMA and psilocybin, which are showing great success in the clinical trial data when they're used against things like end-of-life distress or treatment-resistant depression. Those are experiences more than they're a program of taking pills for the rest of your life. So this is the white space we're really excited about. We're building business models now, and we're releasing data now, and creating protocols that are being used now. So this doesn't require the legalization necessarily of new compounds. It's a business that we're building, and you'll hear more about in our news flow. Let's move on to the next slide, please. Our board, my co-founders are Swirly Weinreb and Jesse Kaplan. For those that aren't familiar, they run a firm called Plaza Capital, and they've had a lot of success investing in growth companies. And that's what I've been doing for the balance of my career, and working very closely with them on a lot of investments. So we founded this company together. We are long-term investors. I'm a founding CEO, and this is all I've been doing for years now, and all I will do for the foreseeable future. So we're all very much aligned for the long term. Chuck Raffici joined our board, a very exciting addition, someone who's got a lot of experience building new businesses in unregulated markets. He's one of the forefathers of cannabis in Canada and one of the co-founders of Canopy Growth. And so we've got, in addition to this, a lot of advisors who contribute and in many ways follow our work. And we've built successful businesses in other sectors, and we're really set up and positioned to probably have our greatest success in this sector. Move to the next slide, please. So here's a list of comparable companies in the psychedelic sector. This is a select number of companies. Obviously, there's dozens and dozens at this point. I just want to point out again that we've only been public a month. We've raised capital ourselves, and that we didn't go out and market to many people. So there's a lack of awareness for sure, but we've gone public in part for that reason, partly to help scale the company, and partly to increase exposure. We want people to know about our clinics. So we think the word will get out, and we've got a US listing coming up in a couple of weeks. So you'll be hearing much more from us, and I think that the world will start recognizing the role that we're playing now. If we can move to the next slide, please. A bit of information on the data really since we've been trading, and reflected also in the comp slide in terms of our market cap. So we're really excited. It's been a great month of trading. The last round of financing was at $1. So we've got a very liquid market and a lot of long-term strategic shareholders. And we expect a lot of growth from here. Again, from a market awareness perspective, I don't think many people have had the opportunity, for example, for this level of insight. So I'm really glad to give it, and I hope people understand and pay attention to just how quickly we're growing. You can go to the next slide, please. So this is a summary slide, and broadly speaking, I want to explain that the role we're playing in the value chain associated with psychedelic medicine is really unique, and the sector itself is obviously at such an early stage that not all the business models are very well understood. So instead of creating a business model that relies on the legalization of certain compounds, our business model works today, and I hope people are enlightened that these alternative mental health modalities exist, and that there's a place that people can go and get the specialized help particular to them, and that in the future, when we live, as I mentioned, using the great Rick Doblin's quote, which is when changing your consciousness is a fundamental human right, and people are able to go do that in a safe and regulated way, we're going to be one of the leading brands that's trusted to help them do that. I think that's the end of our presentation. Right.
You're on?
Yep.
Can you hear me okay? Okay, fantastic. Okay, so I want to ask you. So there's really three pillars to the business. So you got you have the clinics, which is kind of the mental health clinics, which use the psychedelics. Right? And then you have the contract research for psychedelic drug development, and you have the retreats, which are coming up. What is it? Actually, no, before legalization, but after COVID, let's just say.
Correct, because there's places that it's legal to do certain of those compounds, right? Like psilocybin in the Netherlands. So as soon as COVID's done, we'll be back on.
Okay, so my question is really like, what's so you're generating revenues now, right? You're doing you got the 4 clinics that have revenues. What's the kind of the path? Like, I mean, you're doing, I think, was it 4 million right now out of the 4 clinics or something like that?
Yeah, so the 2019 number was 2 million in revenue. The 2020 number we haven't announced, but the client visits have grown about 100%, so you can extrapolate. So that's right. It's you can assume close to a $4 million run rate on 4 clinics. And the expectation, we're going to grow those both by M&A and organically. So when we talk about organically, our clinics, the ones we operate, are at 100% capacity. I mentioned 10,000 to 20,000 client visits year over year. So for us to open a new clinic, and we will open some more, both in-state in Utah and out-state very quickly, because it's a couple $100,000 to start a clinic, and that clinic operates at $1 million revenue run rate after a year. So the rough math would be, even if just in Utah, if we open 10 more clinics, that would be a $10 million run rate that we would add. So that's only organic. We're going to do that. We're looking at Oregon, of course. We're looking at Colorado in particular. Canada, where our headquarters is based, is actually a great opportunity now because there's exemptions from the government to provide access to some of these drugs. So geographically, again, if you can imagine a world where it's your legal right to go and have the safe experience, we expect to be represented absolutely all over the map. And much like you'd see other physical health-focused clinics, dental clinics or doctors' clinics, you'll see a lot more mental health clinics, and many of them will be ours.
Okay. And what about so you also have acquisitions planned?
Correct. So on the M&A front, it allows us to grow even more quickly. We are scaling our team. We've raised capital that allows us to grow organically. The M&A pipeline's exciting because we focus again on the alternative mental health modalities. We don't want to just buy clinics or partner with people who provide only the, let's say, legacy services like CBT. We partner with people who are already working and have the experience. So when clients come see them, they can provide the alternative services. So there's a pipeline of those people and those clinics that we're working with, and we're pretty excited about it.
Okay. What do you, and I think I may have asked you that on the first live stream, but in terms of your acquisition, your pipeline of potential acquisitions, what do you think you can I mean, I'm sure you have a pipeline right now that you're in various stages of discussion with.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the numbers and what we would expect to, you can look at it both M&A and organic. And I think what you'll see within a couple of years, I think you'll see close to 100 clinics. Okay, from our model. That's going to be a quick growth, as that's a very quick and steep growth curve. So let's say the largest, the year-over-year growth, I think you'll see in 2021 and 2022. Because that will be a doubling or tripling of clinics, right? It'll be 100% or 300 days. We'll go from 4, and I think we'll be at, by end of year, we'd probably be closer to a dozen, okay? But within that second and third year, you're going to see the compounded growth, I think, and it becomes easier to operate once you have, for example, beachheads in new jurisdictions, much like we have in Utah, right? When we started, we had a centralized location in Salt Lake City. And now we're in fact getting ready to announce a new clinic that'll open in Utah, strategically located next to a hospital, for example. So you start being able. This is not a one clinic per city kind of business, as you can imagine. You're New York City, Jack, and there's 10 million people there. We're going to need a lot of new clinics, and I'll remind your audience that it's well understood.
there's a lot of need for mental health services in New York.
Thousands and thousands of clinics we will need for that reason.
Yeah. That's just basically any big city is going to have mass, especially now. But okay, so here's the takeaway. This is, I think, okay, so the goal here is to have 100 clinics up and running in the next 36 months.
Yeah, that's not a specific goal, but the goal is to be at that or more in the next 36 months. Sure.
So that's 100 million revenue, basically, based on the numbers you're doing now.
Yeah, I think that's a fair milestone based on that clinic platform.
So basically, okay, so just that part of your business could generate $100 million revenues in the next, let's just call it 3 years, right? Of course, the market's forward-looking, so valuations start stepping up as you progress. So that's part one. Part two is the contract research. When is that going to become a factor? The contract research revenues, how big is that opportunity?
Right. So again, to make sure it's clear, we just summarized just the clinics business, right? Just an expansion of our mental health clinic franchise. Could be $100 million business, and that's what we're building towards at scale, based on, again, a base of about 100 clinics, which you used. And if that grows, then let's keep the same math, right? So for every 100 clinics, that's $100 million. And I can tell you that over a 5-year period, let's call it now a 3 to 5 year period, we would want more than 100 clinics. The world needs more than 100 clinics, okay? And it's not going to be just our clinics. We have very, very specific expertise. So just on the clinic side, of course, a $100 million business based on 100 clinics, but we all obviously want more than 100 clinics, so it could be a $500 million business only on the clinics. Moving to the CRO side, the margins are really significantly better, in fact, in the CRO business, first of all. So you can do 30 to 50% margins on long-term contracts serving large pharma clients. We're going to be announcing some news soon, Jack, and you'll see an example of how the clinical research platform is growing. So how that grows is you add research sites, and the more well-known we are for the work that we've done and we're doing, and the more trials we announce and people hear about, the more business flows to us. That's the experience we're having. So we've got a pipeline. Again, I'm now talking about new clinical trials that we'll be adding and new sites that we'll be adding, and that's how you expand that business. I think that is in fact going to be, if not equivalent, it could be more in the end than our clinical research business. And that's because the amount of money that's being spent on drug development right now in psychedelic medicine is really enormous. So there's a huge wave of money there. It needs specialist sites, and that's that unique part of the value chain that we provide.
Okay, so really, this is 36 months from now, 200 million plus revenues potential or more.
Absolutely. I think in terms of potential, I don't think we're factoring in what growth in mental health looks like. So yeah, I want to make sure that this isn't abstract for people that are listening or watching. To make it really clear, mental health has been stigmatized for a very long time. I mean, I'm sure you can relate, Jack. I can relate. Most of the audience can relate. Mental health wasn't cool. In fact, mental health was very uncool. You didn't talk about it. Policymakers, regulators, the private sector didn't create good alternatives to serve people. And it was something that was swept under the rug. So the game has changed completely. Mental health is not uncool. The stigma is being removed. And both industry and government and everybody associated, really, in terms of, again, both politically and economically speaking, if it's your workforce, if it's your constituent, if you're a politician, you can't ignore the people are either underserved or not at all served, okay, in terms of addressing mental health. And imagine now a world, and this is the world that we're building, we hope for, where mental health is just like physical health. There's no stigma. If you suffer from a terrible disease like cancer, you're not embarrassed about it. You go to an oncologist and you get the best treatment in the world. So that's the world that we're creating. Okay, and that's when, if you have depression, you don't, first of all, you will have an understanding, because we're bringing this to the world and we're just starting to create this awareness that alternative mental health clinics exist. There's somewhere for you to go. So this is really what is meant to be specific and take it out of this abstract of new paradigm. That's what a new paradigm means. So once that person doesn't suffer from stigma, and we've created a world where we're addressing those needs by providing alternatives, that person needs to find one of our sites close to where they live, either a research site where they can access a clinical trial in some cases, or a clinic where they can go see the range of alternative compounds that are legal and safe, and try and find the one that matches their needs. So that's the new paradigm. And in that paradigm, I really, your question was, growth, right? And I mean, I'm saying thousands of clinics are required, maybe thousands of clinics just in New York City for that matter, to serve the 10 million people there.
It could be a few hundred, definitely, but okay. So this story basically has. I could definitely see kind of the upside here. We're going to jump into some audience questions here. Before I do that, I want to ask you. Okay, so let's say 200 million revenues. Let's say 3 years from now, obviously, it starts scaling up. So again, how many shares? So I'm trying to figure out what's the path for this stock. Like, what is the path for the stock to be? A 10x from here, 10 bagger, so $15 stock. Can the stock be a $15 stock? How long would it take? What needs to happen for that to be $15?
The math, the arithmetic on that is pretty simple. I mean, I won't shy away from the question. I know that's what your investors seek out.
That's what they're looking for, those 10x stocks.
As am I. I've spent 20 years totally dedicated to venture capital investing and operating. So that's all I do, and I'm really comfortable with the expectations that go along with that. We've raised all the capital ourselves. It's been about over $15 million to date. And it's not the first time I've been asked by people, what is the expected return here, given that I'm taking early risk with you? I've explained these are new, some cases, business models without precedent. So I think the 10x return is possible, plus, 10 bagger plus, and it's partly why we're in this business, because we really want it to be a very successful company, and in order of magnitude type of returns. And the way you get it is by expanding those clinics, expanding the clinical research sites, and in some cases developing, I mentioned earlier, developing protocols where we don't have to develop drugs, and there's a lot of drug developers that do the safety and efficacy data, okay, that we can essentially benefit from. And we're very grateful for people like MAPS, who've spent $100 million as a not-profit company, taking a compound that is off patent, through a phase 3 trial. So our opportunity is to create the therapeutic protocols, and I mentioned earlier an example of that. I call it the white space. So market opportunity and understanding how Novamind grows into a market. First, let's understand why that $100 billion plus market exists, and then it's how is Novamind growing into it. So I'll just remind that $100+ billion market exists not only because psychedelic medicine is expected to in part displace things like SSRIs and antidepressants, which really are proven as a standard of care. It's proven that it needs to change. Okay, and so that's your $50 billion market. And then this white space where I give an example of anorexia, where there is no drug. It does not exist, and people should be, I think, shocked on some level to know that, with all the advancements that we have. What if I use an example like palliative care? Okay, maybe it's harder for people to relate to anorexia because they don't know someone who suffered with an eating disorder, but certainly everybody knows someone, or is connected to someone who died, as we all will. And if there is no today standard of care in terms of therapeutic or other, that you can provide to that segment of the population, this is where the market size, it's exciting because you can make a lot of money at it, because there's a huge, let's call it latent demand, which means people have been dying for a really long time. We haven't been caring for them. That's the problem. It's not that people don't suffer from end-of-life distress and anxiety. It's that we have no appropriate care. So Jack, I'm not going to guess it. You can refer to some of the data I mentioned from Canaccord and others earlier. But I'll tell you that one example I saw of this white space, which is rehab centers, which again, maybe a lot of people can relate to because they know about it or it's more familiar. Pharmacogenetics or drugs are used in some cases to treat addiction, right? Those are opioids, and I mentioned those. But in another case, there's a white space, which is rehab centers, where you're treating people for addiction, but you're not using drugs. That is a $42 billion market on its own. Okay, today, in the United States only, $42 billion. So imagine now if you take the rehab centers, if you create palliative centers, if you create specialist eating disorder centers, hundreds of billions, would we agree? Right? If you're able to address parts of those market, and the list goes on and on because there's many
psychedelic, basically with psychedelic treatments, psychedelic medicines.
Correct. And just to remind what it means, really, psychedelic medicine means that it's a therapy, right? As much as it's the drug. If you look at the data, and I won't go deep on this, but the MDMA trial in phase 3 against a placebo effect shows that if you give people the drug without the therapeutic protocols and the integration, it's really a certain level of care, as you can imagine. We're dealing in brains and we're dealing in lives. So it's not a one size fits all, and it's not the old model of take a pill to address. It's have an experience with this compound, and you got to do that in a regulated place. Again, these are not self-administered drugs. So correct, it's using psychedelics paired with therapy and integration from expertly trained people. You will go, Novamind, we believe, will be one of the leaders in the category, in part because our experts are trained, and as I said, safety, I think, trumps everything for most people, right? And there's another segment, let's say, of the market that maybe will want to go to Central America and have these experiences or elsewhere, but we're really focused on the largest percentage of the market, and those are people who are used to a safe medical standard of care, and that's what we have to essentially provide with these new experiences.
Okay, yeah. So I can kind of see the big upside. Okay, and so in terms of the market cap, how many shares out right now?
So we've got about 40 million shares outstanding. Okay. If you do the math again on your numbers, let's attach a 10 times revenue multiple for a growth company, and that's, I think, what you're seeing in the psychedelic sector in some cases for revenue generating companies, and most are. But let's say that we're a revenue generating company, and if you compare to the broader healthcare sector or the growth, the growth subsectors within healthcare broadly, you'll find growth companies in Silicon Valley, et cetera. These are 10 times multiples on sales. So if we get to that 100 million mark, okay, that's $1 billion market cap. Okay, and that's over 40 million shares.
Okay, I mean, I assume by then that you're going to have probably more shares. You might have, I don't know, 70, let's say 75 million, but still.
You could assume, but again, I think, of course, that's a fair assumption. I'm not really modeling for the cap table in 3 years, as much as I think we'll show God.
Okay, let's say 50 million, so it's $20 a share base. If you have 100 million revenues, okay, so the path basically to that 10 bagger plus is 100 million revenues, which could be, let's say you'll hit that number 24 months from now, roughly, if you do the rollout.
If we succeed, and again, it could be faster with M&A. So this really doesn't take into account the fact that if we find the right partners and we can acquire dozens of clinics, we'll do that.
Okay,
so,
and
that, I think it's fair. If you want to maybe use 50 million shares and talk about 100 million revenues in that time frame, the reason I didn't consider that I think we'll be guiding to that kind of success very quickly. So at 40, 50 million shares, you'll start seeing evidence of how dozens of clinics are going to look and are going to scale and how they're operating in terms of cash flows. I think the multiples will probably be even higher at that point if we do what we're doing. And then if you do the math on earnings, or at least on the market cap, and you translate that, to a per share basis, you're dealing in a $15-20 stock.
Okay. Let's see if we can get some audience questions, and we're kind of short on time here. But Jonathan is asking, how much do the institutions pay you to conduct a research study, to conduct one of these contract research deals?
It ranges, and it depends on the client. But a pharmaceutical company, if they're doing a trial over a period for, let's say, some of them run a year, and there can be multiple sites, that can be $1 million of business in a year, and again, at a very high margin. A smaller trial can run only a couple months and can be a couple $100,000 of business.
Jamie's asking, from an M&A standpoint, from M&A, how will these be? How are you going to do this M&A strategy? Cash or stock? Both.
Both. Our preference for sure is to use our currency. I'll be really clear about that. I mean, it also, for a lot of reasons. We want partners that are aligned with our business. We want to use our cash wisely. So part of the reason we went public was to use that currency. You can expect a blend of both. Okay.
By the way, I apologize. I had TSX as I had NM on TSXV. It's CSE. So I was telling the truth in advance, maybe, right?
Not quite. We're happy on CSE for now, and the uplisting really we're focused more on the US. So it's the OTCQX listing. That if you would have by mistake put up OTCQX,
I had TSX. Yeah, I had TSXV NM.
No, so it's the Canadian Securities Exchange.
Yes,
please make sure people know.
What's the when is the OTCQX listing? When is that going to happen?
I think we're about 3 weeks away. It's a legal process, and it just requires sort of wait periods associated with disclosure. So we're far down the road. I'd say about 3 or 4 weeks we'll be live on OTCQX.
Okay. Let's see here. Interesting question. Where can you legally get a medical, or I guess a supervised psychedelic trip?
So it would depend on the compound. There are legal jurisdictions for psilocybin, which is magic mushrooms, for people that aren't familiar. The Netherlands, so you can go to really anywhere federally in Holland. There's places that are sanctioned, but near Amsterdam, for example, where we made our investment, that's somewhere where we can refer people today. There's a lot of places. Again, the question was legal, correct? So
yeah. I guess supervised. I guess like professional. Professional.
Yeah, it's a good question. They go hand in hand, right? You want to be in a jurisdiction where you know what you're doing is not against the law, and you also want it to be a jurisdiction where people are trained because they've been able to do these kinds of activities as medical professionals. So you can have that psychedelic experience. In fact, with ketamine today, ketamine-assisted psychotherapy, again, to be specific. And people travel, in fact, obviously there's a large market that we serve in Utah. Some people travel to our clinics for that specialized ketamine experience. It is psychedelic in nature because it's disassociative. You can look it up. I mentioned psilocybin in the Netherlands. MDMA is not legal anywhere on the planet yet, but what I will say to answer that question, it's an interesting thing that there's people on the spectrum, and sometimes we refer to it on the spectrum of mental health, and sometimes we refer to it as healing the sick and bettering the well. So bettering the well, people who are in a better mental health situation and maybe just want to improve quality of life, let's say. Other people on the other end of the spectrum are very desperate. And they're people that fall into the treatment-resistant category, where they're not served at all today, and they're just suffering. Those people, we see some of them where we can't help them with legal psilocybin, for example, or in the US, we can try and push them towards our clinical trials. And in that case, they might have access to experimental drugs like MDMA or similar psychedelic drugs. So it would be, the short answer would be either at one of our clinics or partners where it's legal, or through a clinical trial. That's how you would access legal psychedelic experiences now. Okay.
Yaron, let's wrap up. Our favorite question here we ask is, in your opinion, top 3 reasons, why should investors consider Novamind today, in your opinion?
I think people can understand what I was describing earlier. Maybe look at pre-internet, or maybe look at pre-cryptocurrency, and just we've all, I think, got enough life experience now that you don't have to take other people's word for it. When you see systemic change. So I would say the top 1, 2, 3, and 10, reasons, it really comes down to the same thing. Mental health is going to look entirely different in a very short period of time. Okay? It does not take the legalization of those compounds for this to change. So if you're looking at mental health in that context, and you remove the stigma, and you remove the lack of alternatives, and you remove the illegality of changing your consciousness. So how about that as a top 3? Stigma is gone, or going slowly, but surely. Alternatives exist, okay? And you have the right and the ability to access them now. So that's happening. We're seeing it year over year. We're going to keep expanding clinics, clinical research sites, encourage people to reach out to us if they want more information. If we can't help them, we'll refer them to other places until we're open. But we hope to be there soon and serving everybody that needs it.
Okay, so takeaway really, you got 4 clinics generating revenues, 4 million. It's going to increase. You're going to, your goal is to get 100 plus clinics the next, 18 months, 200 clinics. So, potentially 200 million revenues, 10x revenues, 2 billion valuation 2 years down the road, 3 years down the road. I guess that's.
I think your crystal ball. I love the way your crystal ball works.
I'm an optimist.
I'm going to order the same one. I think that if we're a top 3 or top 5 player in psychedelic clinics, I think we're going to be a multi-billion-dollar business, and that's the stated goal, right? Top 3 player, world leader, and hundreds and hundreds of clinics. This will be a multi-billion-dollar business.
Okay. Last question is audience question. How do they get in touch with you? What's your contact? I guess with you direct or?
Yeah, there's on the bottom of all our press releases and on our website, there's contact information there, a phone number and an email. Happy if people want to reach out and engage with us. I've got a big team and obviously there's a lot going on, but if someone wants to either, again, if they're looking to from an investment perspective, we can put the right person with them. And if they're looking for alternative mental health modalities, we can also address that.
Okay. So Yaron, on that note, I want to thank you, and we look forward to hearing more progress in the coming weeks.
I'll be excited to share. Thanks, Jack.
Thank you again.